financial literacy, and the human condition. Welcome to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rayam.
It limits all the interest on all your loans taken out before you join the military to 6%. If there is one takeaway from this show, it should be that. Hi, it's Francis. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for watching this video. If you're catching us on YouTube, please help us help others by clicking like, subscribe, and all notifications so you don't miss any videos. And check back for the next video. I think you're going to love it. Thanks again. For more information, you can visit us at hugyourmoney.com. Welcome to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor. I'm flying solo today because my co-host, Jess Tyler, is feeling a little bit under the weather. And because I thought this topic is too important to table. I haven't talked about it on the air for a couple of years, and I was reminded about it because one of our young friends, Aria, she just went off to join the Navy on Sunday. And also on Saturday, my band, I'm a vocalist for those of you who don't know that, my band was playing in Orange, Massachusetts for a boat parade, pre-boat parade concert. And our bass player, Wes Brown, for that evening was wearing a Naval Academy hat. And when we asked him about it, he said that he was not in the military, but his dad was the first African-American graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, which is a pretty amazing feat. His dad lived to be 85, passed away in 2012, and was in the military for more than 20 years, was involved in Korea and the Vietnam War, and retired as a lieutenant commander. So, you know, these things just brought back to me the kind of service that our military provides and the diversity of ethnicity that's involved in our military. And for me personally, that goes back to thinking about their financial readiness. There's a saying that financial readiness is military readiness, because a military member who is, you know, a service member who is focused on, for instance, not losing their home or, you know, paying a debt, is not going to be focused on their job in the same way. Of course, everybody wants to believe that they are always focused, but in the same way that someone who is unburdened from that financial drama, if you will. And also sometimes military personnel who suffer from credit default may not be able to serve at all if they lose their security clearance. So, you know, these are important things to think about, but I don't think that it's not at the forefront when we think about military personnel. We worry about their safety, we worry about their families at home, all of that. But in fact, the money actually really matters to service members. And there are real benefits available to anybody who's on active duty, certainly. And I'm going to go over those today so that people are aware of it. So I think the first thing to remember is that any loans that you got prior to joining the service, those could be at 6%, but you have to ask for it. You have to find your unit leader and just say, do I have these benefits? You know, how do I get these benefits? Because you do have them. And they reach pretty far. Now, that could be your student loans. It could be your mortgage. It could be your credit cards. It could be anything that you're paying for that you signed up for before enrolling, like your car loan. And those could all be at 6%. In fact, there are some things that active duty service members, including reservists and members of the National Guard who are on active duty, are eligible for. And these benefits usually begin the date that you enter active duty, and they generally terminate about a month to 3 months after you're discharged. So some of the benefits are, I've got my little bullet list here. Some of the benefits are that it prevents your landlord from evicting you unless your rent is higher than, are you ready for this? $9,106.46 a month. Of course, this number changes every year. That was a 2023 number. It also stops foreclosures without a court order. So if you're on active duty, your house can't get foreclosed on. Now, wow, we need to talk about that, because I have done shows with service members who have either had the personal experience or known someone who lost their house after coming off of active duty. Sure, they didn't have to pay their mortgage while they were on active duty, but guess what happened? All of that money that was owed accumulated. It built up as a default, or as a debt that's due. And then they come off of active duty, and bam, they get a bill for all that past due mortgage money and mortgage payments, and they can't pay it usually. And so that's extremely sad. If I could suggest any reform in this Servicemembers Civil Relief Act, it should be maybe Servicemembers Credit Relief Act for the acronym, but the military, everything's in acronyms, and SCRA is Servicemembers Civil Relief Act. If I could recommend ever some sort of reform in this act, it would be that, when somebody comes off of active duty, and they do give them some time. I think there might be a 6-month timeline or something to try to catch up, but there should be something, I think, available to all military personnel, whether they're on active duty or not, that would be an added benefit to them, in my opinion. So also, your vehicle cannot be repossessed without a court order if you made a deposit or at least one payment before you joined up. You can't be taken to court for civil proceedings. Now, I've known people who say, well, can I just join the military and get out of my, my divorce or my child's support? And the hearings, yeah, you can't be taken to court while you're on active duty. And that only makes sense. They're not going to pull you off of active duty to bring you to court for your divorce. But when you come off of active duty, it's back to normal. Even if you're storing all of your belongings in one of those pods or a storage center somewhere, this act prevents them from selling your belongings for overdue rent without a court order, as long as you're on active duty. So there are many, many, many more things about this that have to do with, whether you are mobilized PCS, OCONUS, outside of the continental United States for at least 180 days or not. For instance, you can end a vehicle lease that you signed before joining if you're mobilized PCS, OCONUS, or deployed OCONUS for at least 180 days. You can terminate your telecom. So your telephone, your internet, your cable, you can terminate those telecom contracts if you have any still, if you relocate for at least 90 days to an area that doesn't have service. Lots of places don't, and they can't penalize you for it. You can keep your current phone number if, in fact, you cancel your service due to relocation that lasts less than 3 years. So you cancel your service, you're relocated to wherever, Liberia, and if it's less than 3 years, you can get your original phone number back. You can end a housing lease without a penalty if you deploy for 90 days or more. Even your surviving spouse can terminate a lease if their partner dies on active duty. So the idea here is to not pin people down with these payments that they have to make, or damage to their credit, for instance, while they're on active duty. And in fact, if you do default on your credit cards, or you don't make payments on your mortgage or whatever, while you're on active duty, it cannot affect your credit, can't harm your credit. Now, you have to remember that when you come off of active duty, if you're still delinquent, that's going to show up on your credit. And that can be a problem, especially for military personnel, not just in not getting their loans, but some jobs, as I mentioned, you won't be able to do with bad credit. This is an interesting thing. For tax purposes, you get 3 choices. Your military spouse can claim either the home of record, the service member's state of legal residence, or the state they're living in for tax purposes. Interesting to have that choice. So I think I mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. It limits all the interest on all your loans taken out before you join the military to 6%. If there is one takeaway from this show, it should be that. Get to your unit leader if you have debt and it's higher at 6%, and say, look, I want I want to get my benefits under SCRA and have my percentages lowered to 6%. Now, I believe that's not even active duty. I think that's just a service member straight across the board. If you're in the service, you can get 6% on all those loans, but you've got to ask for it. Also, if you use any of your SCRA rights, as I talked about, to delay your payments, then it won't affect your credit report. So, you have other rights under this guideline regarding property taxes, federal taxes, life insurance, and financial or legal penalties even, and court proceedings, et cetera. But you have to check with your unit legal officer for the specifics. So I hope this part is helpful. I'd like to talk more about, what happens for people in the military, that diverse culture I'm talking about, why so many people are affected by that, by being credit invisible, for instance, when we come back. Want to know what it would feel like to be financially unburdened? Let your Hug Financial Coach help you take a load off. Do it for yourself and for those you love. Hug Your Money. So unique, it's patented. Welcome back to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor. We are talking about military personnel today and the benefits that they may have, whether or not on active duty, under the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act, SCRA. So I think this is very important for people to remember and for families to listen to and relay this information to anybody that you know is in the service, because it could make a big difference to them. If you can imagine being deployed or being far away from home or being on active duty, or, suffering any of the fallout, if you pardon that pun, that military personnel deal with on a daily basis. I mean, that's a rugged, important, difficult life. And if you add to that the stress of financial worries, financial burdens, it's going to take its toll somewhere. And I think those of us who have ever just had a financial problem that caused them not to sleep, or to find that their memory is, not as strong as it would have been. They're doing foolish things because they're distracted all the time. You don't want to be doing that with a weapon in your hands or your life at stake. So anything we can do to limit the monetary stress that military personnel suffer, I think is incredibly important. To that end, I want to talk a little bit about some statistics, because I mentioned before the break something called credit invisible. And there are statistics that show that a third of our nation, a third of the people in America, are what we call credit invisible. That does not mean they have bad credit. It means they don't have any credit. And anybody who's ever tried to just get a loan without credit is incredibly frustrated by the fact that maybe they've paid cash for everything in their life, and so they don't have a credit history. So they're very, very trustworthy, perhaps, but they can't prove it on paper. And so we talk about how to build credit for people in that situation. But largely, that sector, that credit invisible sector, is made up, believe it or not, of Black and Hispanic individuals. Now, that is not a stereotype. It's not that all Blacks or all Hispanics don't have credit. Of course not. But it is an injustice, I think, in my view, that many people in those of that ethnicity don't get the same information that some other people seem to be getting. And I don't like it. I'm trying to do anything I can to improve that. But it is a statistic fact right now that largely that third is made up of credit invisible people, is made up of Black and Hispanic people. Now, the reason I'm talking about that in a show when we're talking about military benefits is because the statistics in the military are very interesting when we look at that ethnicity and what people are not, do not have available to them or don't know about. And that's why we're talking about SCRA today. So for instance, I could only get the statistics as as recent as 2019, unfortunately, because this is a slow moving system. But in 2019, the proportion of the military in the United States that was Black, 28.92% and 16.94%. Now, guess which one were men and which was women? The women made up 28.92%. Black women in the military, 28.92%. Black men in the military in 2019, 16.94%. This is a lot of people we're talking about. Now, when we look at Hispanic, 21.39% of the women in the military were Hispanic and 17.9% of men. So now when we start to look at this sort of racial divide, this what do I want to say, this unfortunate credit invisible thing that we have going on. And we link that to what our statistics tell us are credit invisible and what portion of the military are also in the same categories. Then I think it becomes even more important for us to be talking about SCRA because it doesn't see color. It doesn't care. If you're in the military, you got this shot at this, right? You can get 6% on all your debts. You can keep them from foreclosing on your home. You can, things you can do here, whether you're on active duty or not active duty, you have to ask your unit leader about that, and they'll get you to the right area so that you can learn what benefits you have available. I also want to talk more about this because, and please understand me, again, it isn't necessarily color related, but the statistics, which is what, I cut my teeth on statistics because they tell us something about where the inequities are or where things are going well or going wrong. The statistics show that Black and Hispanics also take on more payday loans and more loans at high interest rates because many of them are credit invisible. And if you've ever known anybody who's taken on a payday loan or a loan at a very high interest rate, even a credit card at a very high interest rate, what you know is that it's extremely hard to pay that off in any sort of reasonable time without, even if you pay it off, you're just paying a ton of interest. And it just seems, quite honestly, it seems sad to me. I don't want people who are trying to make ends meet have their only safety net is some ridiculous payday loan or high interest loan. I mean, payday loans, I've done shows about this, and if you look them up, they're an interesting topic all their own. Payday loans have, APRs, right? Interest rates effectively for the whole year that are, upwards of 400%. I remember one was 1,200%. And I called the company directly and I started to ask them questions about it as if I were a candidate. And I got the biggest story. Oh my gosh, the story they told me was, oh, well, you're only going to pay this for a short period of time. You give us your checking account information, and then we'll just debit the payments from your checking account, etc. When I said to them, but that's 1,200% interest in a year. How is that legal? Well, first they give you a song and dance. Well, it's not really that much because you're not going to pay it for very long and blah, blah, blah. Well, it is that much. That's the APR when you start calculating those things, even at 400%. How is this legal? And what I learned was that it's legal usually because those companies are often run by somebody that is in some way listed as a sovereign nation. So ironically, right, we have a minority sovereign nation population running payday loan companies who give loans to minorities at ridiculously high interest rates. Don't get me going. I'm on an Andy Rooney rant. I'm dating myself there. But I just think that, this is so important that our military personnel are not out there under the strain that they're under on a normal daily basis, far away from home, dealing with difficult things. Even the National Guard, it always fascinates me that the National Guard, these people work regular jobs on a daily basis, and then bam, they get deployed, and suddenly they're carrying weapons and driving tanks and doing what they do to keep us safe. And it's really it's unthinkable to me. My hat is off to anybody who's ever joined the military, voluntary or involuntarily. I cannot conceive of what that lifestyle must be like. And the only thing that I can do, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little thing, but if I'm reaching anybody about this, the only thing that I can do to try and help alleviate some of that strain that I know of is to reach out and say, I will help military personnel with their finances. And this is one way for me to do that. Of course, anybody can reach out to us at our office and get help anywhere in the world. All our appointments are virtual. Doesn't matter where you are, as long as you have service. We can do it, and we can help your families as well, because nobody does this alone. You may feel very alone in the military, but I promise you, there's somebody back home who cares about you and who cares whether your finances are working or not. And that leads me to another point that happens very often. Somebody's in the military, there's somebody back home that maybe doesn't have their best interest at heart, but is taking advantage of these benefits, like not paying the mortgage because they cannot be evicted or foreclosed on, maybe not paying their rent, avoiding a car lease payment or something like that. And the service member has no idea. They just don't know what's going on. They're busy, being a service member. And then they come home and they discover this disaster. And I have heard this story far too many times. Oh, I just got the chills thinking about that. But it's true. I've heard this story so many times. And it's just wrong. I mean, I could come up with other words, but it's just wrong that you're there protecting your country and fighting for our freedoms, and you come home to find out that your freedom has been encumbered by debt and by maybe mismanagement of your funds and by benefits that you had, which now they just disappear when you're off of active duty, and you're left holding the bag about what you can do with that. So, I know this isn't a terribly upbeat show for you all, but I'm hoping that it's a very relevant and I hope prudent topic for you. I think it might be important to talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Military Lending Act, the Federal Trade Commission, places that you can go to get information about what your benefits are. The Military Lending Act, for instance, limits the amount that they can charge non-active service members for credit cards to, are you ready for this? 36%. I'd like to see more progress with that. I don't think anybody should be charged 36% for a credit card at all, never mind our military, but it was progress. There was a time when these lenders would sit right there on the base and offer credit cards to people who were, in need of it right away without ever leaving the base. And there are other benefits for military in the Military Lending Act as well, including the payday loans, which are capped at 36%. So for whatever this is worth, you might want to just Google that, Military Lending Act, MLA, and read up, maybe check the Federal Trade Commission, ftc.gov website, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, which has been stripped of a lot of its power fairly recently, but I think which I hope will continue to be able to protect consumers, and that includes people in the military, of course. So check that stuff out and educate yourself about this, because you really may have far more benefits than we're even talking about today. And of course, I want you to get the most accurate and up-to-date information possible. So get your phone out, your iPad, your laptop, whatever, and start Googling this stuff. If you're in the military, you should know about your rights and benefits under SCRA. Managing your finances is more complicated while you're enlisted. So speak to your unit legal officer or contact Hug today and get back to what you do best, protecting and serving the ones you love. Thank you for your service. Your Hug financial coach is ready to help. Hug your money. So unique, it's patented. If you know anyone in the service, please share this with them so that they can get the details out of it and they know what to do and where to go to ask for help under the Servicemembers Civil Relief Act. And I suppose as a woman, I will say I was pleasantly surprised by the statistics of how many military personnel were women, particularly among Black and Hispanic service members. And I think maybe this is not, maybe this isn't a fact, but my experience tells me that women deal with money, their relationship with money in general, of course, women have a different way of looking at it than men have. And sometimes that's very proactive and logical, and they're great at it and everybody's happy about it. But usually underneath there, it means they're managing stress at a high level. And they're probably not talking about it. They're probably not, especially for somebody in the military who is, they spend every day eating, living, and breathing. I can do this myself. I'm part of a team, but everybody relies on me. I'm getting it done. Well, when it comes to money, that's not as easy as it seems, especially if you're focused on other things that, may be more important to you at this time. So just a little note that we're here to help anybody, of course, but certainly service members about this. And so, if you have trouble getting into a virtual meeting, that's just fine. We can email, we can text. You can get somebody at home to meet with us and they can relay the information, whatever is the case. So one last thing I'd like to say is if you're in the military and you've experienced any of the things I'm talking about, whether it's a good story or bad story, whether it's upbeat or it's really dramatic, I would love to hear from you. And there's a chance that we might set some sort of a show up like this, maybe with a group, maybe with one or two people, to talk further about this, because I think it is an important topic and one that I'm happy that we got a chance to cover today. So please write in with your questions, which I don't get to see ahead of time, to J Tyler, that's the letter J, Tyler, at WHMP.com, and we'll answer them on the air. And if we do, you get a copy of my book, Retire Debt and Retire Well. Or you can just write to us at info@hugyourmoney.com, and we're happy to answer your questions directly. You just need to let us know if it's okay to use it on the air or you just want us to answer it privately. Either is just fine. And you can visit us at hugyourmoney.com. That's hug, like everybody needs a hug, yourmoney.com. Or you can call us at the office at 413-773-3333. We'll be back next week with another episode of Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, hopefully with my co-host Jay Tyler, Jess Tyler again. Hopefully she's feeling better. Thank you. Be well. Stay safe. Underwritten by Hug Your Money.
Permission granted to chase your dream. Chase your dream.
Will you help us spread the word about financial fitness? Please like, subscribe, and choose all. Thank you.